The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Good to see everybody once again. Here we are, as Marco, we near the quarter pole during the NHL's regular season. There's Marco D'Amico with RG Media. We're going to link his latest in the NHL trade landscape. You know, we've been talking for what seems like now, almost 2 months about certain markers during the NHL's regular season. 20 games, U.S. Thanksgiving, before the Christmas holiday freeze. And now the injuries are piling up, as it's been well documented. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you're a diehard Montreal Canadian fans. We don't need to go through the injuries. You know there are numerous, and they are piling up, and they're out for a long time. Marco, through rg.org, you broke it down. Let's do it here in video form. What's the reality today as it relates to the trade landscape? And let's tie it into the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, so basically what I've heard, what I'm being told from sources is it's very much a seller's market right now. There's not enough sellers. At the moment of this recording, I believe there's only 5 teams under 500 at this point, and the
Yeah,
most staggering of them all is the Calgary Flames, ladies and gentlemen.
exactly.
And the problem right now in Calgary is there seems to be a what would you say a disconnect on the immediate vision of this franchise. On one end, there is an internal debate that the core is too old, they need to get younger. They've already been in kind of a reset scenario with the way that they've been going about, like trades and drafting. To me, I think in Calgary now there has to be a conversation, between management, ownership, players, where I think it's kind of understood that they need a little bit more star power on that team. They don't have stars. Their only star really right now, because I wouldn't contribute the notion of a star at this stage of his career to Jonathan Huberdeau. The only star they really have established is Nazem Kadri, and he's 35 years old. So you have to make you have to make decisions for the future, because right now, in terms of top elite prospects, the only one they have in the entire system is Zane Parek, and he plays right defense. Like, you're going to need some offense. You can't just rely on Zane Parek and Dustin Wolf for the remainder of that franchise's lifespan. So with a new arena coming in September 2027, there is an internal debate right now over what direction the Flames will take. I ultimately believe that the Flames will be forced to look the reality in the mirror and say, we need to take advantage of this trade market, because it is very much a seller's trade market. Other than the Flames, who else are we talking about, Sean?
Well, that's the money. That's the money question, and obviously, I mean, um, I think you break it down well when you talk about they're the ones keeping the water from breaking down the dam,
They're
and I
definitely
guess
holding back the trade. Yep,
right.
100%.
So, and I think the other money point is that it's not a buyer's market, and if we tie it
At
in
all.
directly to the Canadians, Kirby Doc
Whew.
gets hurt. Like, I don't know if Kirby Doc was a trade chip or whatever. I don't want to speculate on that, but knowing that the Canadians are bruised and battered, we know how many teams right now are closely connected from the bottom of any division to the top of the division outside of Colorado, really. I mean, it's have a good week, you're back in it. Have a bad week, you're back out of it. Um, the St. Louis Blues, they've been lots of talk around the St. Louis Blues. You and I,
Mhm.
during our live show Monday at Maison Publique McLean's, talked about some speculation about the Nashville Predators, Steven Stamkos, in or out, Philip Forsberg, what's happening there. I mean, how close to we are the reality of if Calgary's the first domino to fall, what's the anticipated level that St. Louis gets in the trade market, Nashville gets in the trade market, and we get what fans love? That's transactions, your team getting better
Mhm.
or your team deciding to rebuild, Marco.
Yeah, well, I think, we spoke about it yesterday, and I said that the Canadians weren't going to be making any panic trades. The
Right.
Canadians are going to look internally. They're trying Joshua Roy, they're trying Jared Davidson. But the word that we're getting is the Canadians are fielding, a significant amount of calls, checking in with teams, seeing if there's an option for them to improve this team. They're having conversations on a multilateral basis. Yes, they'd like to add a top six player, wouldn't everybody right now?
No
Especially
kidding.
with all the injuries in the NHL. It's not just the Canadians hitting that injury bug. Every team. Look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're hitting the injury bug right now. You look
Yep.
at the Minnesota Wild hitting the injury bug. Ryan Hartman out. They just lost Marco Rossi. The Washington Capitals getting that injury bug. The Florida Panthers started with a pretty substantial injury bug. So injuries are a huge part of this season. It's creating a higher level of desperation amongst teams trying to improve. And so sellers have zero incentive right now to do anything in terms of selling off their pieces. And if you're a team like St. Louis, what we're hearing out of St. Louis is they are not interested in selling as we
Hmm.
would normally understand it. They're looking for a hockey trade. They're looking to get players that can come into their lineup and help, or be very close to coming into their lineup and helping. Because right now, look at the St. Louis Blues. Dalibor Dvorsky is playing right now. They've got a lot of younger players. Jimmy Snuggerud is up in the lineup as well. Uh,
Hmm.
they're trusting their youth right now, and some of those younger guys are performing well. So they're thinking to themselves, we have excess assets here, potentially being able to turn this into a need which they've identified to be their aging defense. Logan May, who is supposed to be the solution, he's playing well for in the
Yeah.
American Hockey League for them. I mean,
Yep.
offensively, defensively is still a work in progress, but he's performing
Hmm.
well offensively. So there is an option, there is potential there, but they want a sure piece to go with Philip Broberg for the future. And that's where guys like Braden Shen come into the discussion. That's where guys like Jordan Kyrou come into the discussion. Um, I'm not going to advance that Rob Thomas is
Yeah.
ever going to be available, but that teams are going to check on him.
Sure.
But I will state that he is not available. It would be the former two that I discussed. Definitely looking into what would be available for them, because we know, or at least I can report that Jordan Kyrou's name was there when the Blues were discussing with the Islanders for Noah Dobson's availability. And the only reason that got nixed, or that
Hmm.
conversation ended early, is because Noah Dobson indicated that he would like to stay in the Eastern Conference and the Blues are in the Western Conference. So I don't think that there would be an opposition to potentially moving on from some of these players if it brought in, a promising piece on defense that's age appropriate. But the other thing to keep into consideration, this is what stops the Blues from being a little bit more aggressive. A lot of no trade clauses in there, including a full no trade clause with Jordan Kyrou.
What did the Athletic have? They're reporting like 33% of players in the league have some sort of clause in their contract that would
Yeah.
prohibit a team from moving if they're so inclined to move. And there are a couple of
Well,
directions I want to take this, right? Like whether it's the Calgary Flames that seem to be the linchpin holding things back from the potential of several teams now maneuvering, waiting for Calgary. I want to talk about, are they in a hurry? They're just playing the waiting game. Is this a game of high stakes poker, perhaps? But before we get to that, like we talked about this on a previous episode, the Canadians
mhm.
looking at the waiver wire when John Beecher was available. Well, Calgary had him. They were first up. Boom, they claim him off waivers, right?
Yeah.
What's the reporting? What's your level of knowledge on A, how aggressive do we believe GM Ken Hughes to be
Whew.
today in terms of improving? And is he looking for a splashier player or is he looking for an air quote more affordable player if he's able to land one?
Yes. That's the best answer I can give you.
Well, that's
So
I think that's a
Kent
great
Hughes,
answer.
it is. So Kent Hughes is having multiple discussions. Sean, we discussed the potential of adding to the defensive side. I don't think that's the case. We discussed this yesterday. I don't think that's happening.
Yeah,
I think they're very much focused at forward. I think that they feel
mm,
they have the necessary depth on defense, even after the loss of Caden Gooley. I mean, they
interesting.
have the luxury of being able to yo-yo Mark Del Gaizo And if they really did need someone for a long term, if there was, knock on wood, another injury, Adam Engstrom, I feel, would be able to come in without a problem and play bottom pair minutes without issue, left or right side. And he's been playing on the right side all season in Laval, so no worries there. I think it's very much at forward. They feel like there's a lack of experience right now throughout the lineup. It's kind of obvious. They have 4 rookies right now playing there, plus a 21-year-old Juraj Slafkovsky. It's not, super brim with experience. And those that have experience, outside of Jake Evans and most recently, Josh Anderson,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's necessarily some good some motivational experience there that's going to help drag them into the fight. Like I've adored Brendan Gallagher's performance as a Montreal Canadian from the start of his career, but I just don't think that he falls anymore. And I think that Joe Veleno has been fine in the fact that he is just an extra forward that's being forced to play due to the amounts of injuries at forward. But ideally, you would want him as your 13th forward. So the Canadians are looking to make that happen with maybe a value trade to bring in someone that'll be able to help with the secondary scoring, take a little bit of a load off on the younger kids, and
Hmm.
and kind of help stabilize those middle 6 lines. I think that's the idea. Without, of course, moving away from the ultimate goal of adding a top 6 piece, be it at center, which is preferred, or on the wing. The Canadians are definitely looking at those options because we talk center, 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 but if the Juraj Slafkovsky, Kapanen, and Ivan Demidov line continues to play well, then it's the top line that actually needs a new winger to be able to play on that if they cannot unlock Zachary Bolduc's offense. So there's a lot of moving parts here. The Canadians are open to the idea of improving their top 6 in whatever way they can, and kind of moving along with that. Ideally, and this is kind of where the conversation lies, they're not in a rush to do the former. So they're not in a rush to do a massive trade for a top 6 player, unless there's a perfect fit there. Like they're not going to make a panic trade. This is not a thing that Kent Hughes does, and this is the one thing that I've heard is he's
Hmm.
been extremely aggressive on the phones, but he's not in the business of sacrificing an unprotected first round pick and trading away top prospects right off the bat if it isn't for a perfect fit, and in his eyes a perfect fit. So that becomes a debatable topic with fans. What is a perfect fit? What does that look like? So if the Canadians are to make a trade, I believe it'll be an Alex Carrier type trade where it's a younger piece or a draft pick to go and get in a guy that might solidify their depth and put people back in the right chair.
Interesting perspective because we can talk about, as you mentioned earlier, Joshua Ottawa calls up, Jared Davison gets called up, showcase pieces or not, to show other teams that, hey, these guys can skate, they can play a regular shift. But at the end of the day, for the Montreal Canadiens, who are getting set to take on and host the Washington Capitals with a 10-6-3 record, very much in the top 3 of the NHL's Atlantic Division. But yet, Marco, as you know, Joe Veleno on no points, Brendan Gallagher, whose name you just dropped, on 0 goals. And these guys take regular shifts. Gallagher gets a good chunk
Power
of
play
second
time.
wave, exactly, second wave power play time. I wonder how much the sample size has grown. And if they just look at that and say, hey, listen, we just can't afford to keep moving forward with this. It's too much pressure on everybody else. And you have
Mhm.
2 guys playing in 12 forward positions that really aren't helping to produce offense. I don't know how much, Marco, you can lean on the Josh Andersons and the Jake Evans and say, okay, guys, I need that Monday performance. I need you to run it back Thursday. I need you to run it back on Saturday. So it seems more skewed. Is it fair to guess that they're looking to replace, if they can, without paying a significant price to do so, looking
Mhm.
for a better contributor to maybe play that 4C role or to complement a wing position in the bottom 6 today?
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think they definitely are looking for experience. I think they're definitely looking for a type of player that can kind of come in and round things out, so
Yeah.
that they're less reliant on Laval, because they do feel like Owen Beck and Florian Xhekaj need more time to simmer. So that would be the most pressing of options. I think that a top 6 trade takes weeks, if not months, to materialize. These things don't happen like this. They check in on players, they see what teams are thinking about, and then they eventually start talking about players. and who would be available. And so, like, I'll give you an example. It took weeks for the Carrier trade to go down because it was Nashville that kept asking about Justin Barron,
Mm,
and the Canadians were not interested in doing a regular swap. They didn't want a draft pick for him. And then the moment Alex Carrier's name was brought up by Nashville, well, then the trade talk got serious. Well, that's the kind of situation the Montreal Canadiens are waiting for, is that they're waiting for teams to get serious about names that could help them now and in the future. And I think that's where the NHL trade market is a little bit frozen right now, because there seemed to be way more pressure, even from the seller's standpoint last year, than there is now. Because as we spoke about, Calgary, zero rush. Someone's going to have to blow their socks off with an
right.
offer that they were going to be able to take up to the upper echelons of the organization to get approved. St. Louis want to make a hockey trade, almost like Nashville last year, aren't looking to sell off, want to make a hockey trade. And then you look at the other teams that are in the bottom of the standings. Nashville, we just finished talking about, way too many no trade clauses on that team. And then
Hmm.
you have Ryan O'Reilly, who's been gifted a non-written no trade clause by Barry Trotz, won't trade him to a place he doesn't want to go. And then after that, the Buffalo Sabres, we talked about this last week, teams calling, checking in to see what their decision is going to be with some of their players. They don't want to make any panic trades either.
Mm.
And then right after them, you have the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are looking to buy, the Washington Capitals, who are looking to buy, and the San Jose Sharks, who are above 500 at the moment of this recording, with
Yep.
zero pressure to sell, especially with Michael Misa out, not needing that extra contract slot. They'll eventually make moves. They have too many unrestricted free agents for them not to make moves. But the longer they wait, the better the bounty will get for them. And so there is very little, I would say, seller context in this situation. I think what's more likely to happen is you may see struggling teams trade with each other, as opposed to going to the traditional route of trying to trade with a bottom feeding team and trying to get their players out of there. I think that's more like what you'd be expecting. So maybe a prospect swap, maybe a team that's got an excess in a certain position that's willing to take a draft pick for a marginal player on their roster that the Canadians would be able to put on a third or a fourth line. That's the kind of vision that you'd be looking for, because right now there is no magical bean that's going to save the Canadians from a top of the lineup scenario. Because if one of those guys becomes available, the whole league is going to be on that, with the amount of disappointment that we're seeing in the standings right now and the amount of struggles we're seeing through the injuries in the NHL.
I think we can also look at a team like Vancouver that has continually been in the mix in terms of trying to
Vancouver.
improve the depth at forward, right, center
Hmm.
position, yada yada yada. So the Canadians have several obstacles to overcome,
Yep.
whether it's the asking price, who they're willing to perhaps part with, other teams that perhaps can overpay, overbid. I'm glad you brought up Justin Barron. We talked about Logan Mailloux producing offense in the American Hockey League since he was sent back down a couple of weeks ago by
Hmm.
the St. Louis Blues. You dropped Adam Engstrom's name. You get the pattern here. We're talking about defensive prospects, right? Jaden Struble is, every now and again been in the rumor mill. Boston guy. Could he be on the block here? I personally, and I like what you had said earlier. I don't think if the Canadiens are making a move, I don't think someone like David Reinbacher's in the mix. I don't think someone like Michael
No.
Hayes in the mix. That seems to be pretty consistent from the reporting. But what about someone like Adam Engstrom? What about someone like Jaden Struble? Because again, the Canadians maybe value in terms of
The
attractiveness to other teams for a trade, maybe still
the
rest on the blue
only
line.
the only way, see, the thing is, and this is my issue, is you can't, I want to say this in a family friendly way, but you can't
Ooh,
go all in this way for
I
a
wonder what you were
piece that
gonna
may
say.
not be an impact. Well, you know what I was going to say,
I think
but
so.
you can't go all in a situation like this with prime assets. You can't make those mistakes.
Yeah,
Ken Hughes is not in the business of selling low, so you could forget a Reinbacher trade.
yeah,
He's the organization definitely appreciates, to a high degree, definitely appreciates Adam Engstrom. So I don't think that they're in a rush to trade him unless it's in a major trade for a piece that's going to help them at forward for a long period of time,
agreed.
because they're eventually going to have to make a decision between Jacky, Struble, and
Yep,
Engstrom, and
yep.
Reinbacher to a degree. So I just, those are three positions, maybe two, depending on what they decide to do with Mike Matheson, for the future, and so you got to make
Yeah.
calls there. So I don't think the Canadians are going to be moving on from those guys unless they have some sort of idea that Mike Matheson is basically locked, about a formality to get locked into an
Mhm.
extension. So again, I wouldn't look at that. I wouldn't look at it that way. But if there is an opportunity to get a high end center prospect for a high end defensive prospect, the Canadians, I believe, will certainly
Mhm.
look at that because they do feel like they have excess on the defensive side of things, and they don't have a sure bet in terms of a future player at
Mm.
center. Michael Hage being the closest to it. I understand Alexander Zharovsky is playing center in Russia. Cooled down a little while since the power play has gone a little cold in Ufa. As a pure center, not going to happen. Just playing there because
Mm.
there's a lack of depth in Ufa. Long term, he's viewed as a winger, and there is debate within the Montreal Canadiens organization as to what Michael Hage's position is. So if there is a way to improve at center, they'll try it. Believe me, they'll try it. And they'll continue to work with Michael Hage to try and develop him as a center. But they're not going to put all their eggs in one basket. They're trying to improve in areas of need. I would not expect, from what I'm being told, I would not expect fireworks, but Kent Hughes takes one phone call from another GM that's like, okay, we're willing to talk here. And then we've seen Kent Hughes pounce, like at the Noah Dobson trade, pounce whenever a player that they like is made available.
Interesting. Because I mean, I think, trying to understand and read between the lines that
Mhm,
I think the record of the Montreal Canadiens going into their game with Washington, I think allows for a threshold of patience in that
mhm.
they don't have to be, in my opinion, today, they don't have to be the market setter. They don't have to
No,
be the one that breaks the dam and floods
no.
the trade market and everybody follows. I think they can wait for a team, Marco, to
Mhm.
make the first move, see what the value is, and then maybe pick on a team that hasn't caught up in the standings and say, "Okay, let's do some business here." That's my read today.
There are more desperate general managers that Kent Hughes right now. You look at, Brad Treliving going out and saying that the Maple Leafs start
Ooh,
to the season is on him.
right.
That's SOS sign number one. Like, this is a general manager that's going to try to rectify the wrongs that he feels he wasn't able to right in the summer. Well, that's the exact same thing. We've seen Patrick Allvin and Rutherford in Vancouver talk about this is not a retool, this is not a rebuild. We are trying to build, we are trying to buy. Their
Yeah,
colors are all over for everyone to see. And then the St. Louis Blues and the Nashville Predators announcing that they're open for business. Well, the writing is on the wall. Now it's a question of what shakes loose, who flinches, because as I've been told, right now it's a giant full level Texas Hold'em poker game, and they're just waiting for the first team to show their hand. And then there may be, a flurry of trades, as we saw last year around this time, where there was about a dozen trades between, about now and the December trade freeze, which is, almost a month from now, the December 18th or 19th, I believe. So it's something to keep an eye on out, because the pressure may mount for underperforming teams and they'll just make moves, and that may set the market. And I don't think the Canadians want to be the market setter in this case.
agreed.
They would rather go for the more value trades as opposed to trying to shoot for the stars and making a mistake that selling teams are waiting for their counterparts to make.
Great stuff as always. We'll link the story that Marco put out on rg.org in the description of this video. And you can be the market setter by getting the best for your pet at littlebearonline.com on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square.
Mhm.
Bedding, toys, food, expert advice without predatory salespeople. And Chuck and Evie and their wonderful staff. This is a family owned business. They care about your pet as much as you do. And don't be
Mhm.
shy. Go check them out. They've got amazing deals from the best brands, Marco, from around the world.
And speaking of deals, also Canuck jackets in Montreal on Rachel. They have their Black Friday deal coming up as of next week. So the 25th of November to the 1st of December. Jackets, high quality jackets. I could tell you I wasn't cold for a lick with their jackets this week. High quality jackets, up to 40% off. I invite you all to go and take a look. They'll take care of you. They have a really cool sub-zero room to let you
Yes.
actually test out these jackets. So if
That
you
was
don't think I'm
cool, eh?
telling the truth,
That was
you
cool.
can go and test it out yourselves, guys.
Yeah.
So once again, Canuck jackets. I invite everybody to go and check them out for their Black Friday sale starting next week.
All right, Marco, thanks as always. We'll be back Friday at noontime for a live presentation as the Montreal Canadiens look to get off the schneid of a 4-game losing streak when they host Washington. We'll be here to break it all down with all of your comments, reactions, and questions Friday at noontime on the live version of the Starr and D'Amico show. Marco, thanks.
Always a pleasure, guys.